All right, welcome everyone. So I thought it might be fun to get a little bit into the feet and a little bit into the connection with the ground more generally, which if we're standing and walking, it's our feet, but we use the ground in other ways, of course, depending on what we're doing, what shape we're in. But today we'll mainly be kind of looking at the connection through the feet. And yet, of course, the feet are influenced by everything above the feet, right? So it's never completely true to say we're looking at the feet, or we're looking at the hips, or we're looking at the elbows, or whatever it is. But we will be working a bit with the feet, and particularly with the ankles. And so we'll see how that goes. Do people have a sense of what I might be talking about if I say ground forces? Not necessarily. Okay.
Maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so if you have ever been on a trampoline before, right? You know that you can jump, and then when you come down, your feet are gonna reach the surface of the trampoline, and the trampoline is then gonna continue to go down, and at a certain point, it's going to send you back up, right? There's this elastic rebound that happens. And although it's not so obvious, the same thing happens on any surface. Okay, there's a way that the surface, my loud noises out on the street again. When we put weight into the ground doesn't go anywhere, right? So the force that we put, it rebounds right back through us, right? And that just happens. But what we'd like to do is to be able to take advantage of that, right? So that we can sort of organize to follow that rebound as if we were on the trampoline, right? The opposite of that would be like I take a step and it's like stepping into quicksand, right? I just step and move and I just go down, right? And you all may have likely encountered people talking about posture or walking, and they have images like, just imagine a balloon is lifting you up and this kind of thing, right? And it's a good image, but it's also, it's like, am I just supposed to imagine that balloon at all times? You know, what is it? And it gives you an idea, right? But to be able to find it, it's also a sense that if you imagine you're standing, or you look back here at my, imagine Bob over here, kind of works. He's in the distance, but if you follow my thumb. But so if he steps on the ground with his feet, he wants the force to go all the way up through the top of his head. And what typically happens is when we take a step, we might have a bit of a lift on one side, and maybe on the other side a little bit of a fall, right? So if the force goes up through one joint and the next very clearly, this is what we're looking for, and it goes right up. But what can happen is, if this is the joint, is that the force can go up and it can kind of go across the joint. So that if there's another bone here, if the force goes this way, it stops going up, right? It starts like, so imagine like you're walking and what we say, your knee buckles, right? Like you step in a pothole and your knee goes out to the side. Well, everything above is going to come down, right? Because the force isn't able to keep going up. It went to where your knee went. And so this is an idea around ground forces is that we're looking for this force that comes straight up. And when we do that, we have the most efficient use of the musculature. Because again, what happens if you step and your knee goes out to the side? Well, if you're paying attention, you might not actually fall on the ground, but you have to catch yourself, right? And you sort of have to clench somewhere, and you've got to rearrange something. But you have to expend effort to pull yourself back into some kind of alignment, right? When the alignment is kind of clear and the movement is always going up, then we're freer to do other things. So I can move my arms, I can look around and see what's happening. And I can't do that as much if I'm tensing the muscles in my neck because I'm falling over, then I can't turn my head as easily because those muscles are already engaged, right? So there's a connection between something that we're always looking at in a Feldenkrais lesson, which is to try to distribute the effort evenly throughout the body. But then there's also a particular thing that we're looking at with the relationship to the ground and how the ground sends a force kind of upwards. Okay, so that's the conceptual side of it, and hopefully we'll try to make that something that we can feel in the course of the class, if that sounds good. But are there any questions about that or thoughts about that?
Well, the only thought that I had about that was, there are days when I wish I had more bumps in my step,
Absolutely.
as opposed to dragging myself around. I said, come on, Joe, I guess got a little bumps in your step. Make you feel good?
Perfect. Okay. Well, I think what we're going to do today is going to put some bounce in your step. So we'll check in with you at the end about that. But yeah, when there's bounce, it's almost like we say there is bounce, but that bounce it's like an assistance, like something's helping me, right? And that something might be the ground forces. Okay. All right. Well, so let's begin in standing. And I'll also just say again what I said in the email before. We're going to have the legs long during this lesson, lying on the back with the legs long. So if you are someone that when you do that, you tend to have a lot of space under the knees and it's not so comfortable, you're someone who prefers to stand the feet, then what you can do is maybe roll up a blanket or something and put it behind your knees so that your knees do have the sense of being able to rest. Because it doesn't matter if the knees are, a little bent off the ground that way, but essentially we want to be in the position of having long legs. So if you need to grab anything for that reason, some of you will be just fine, without that. So it's not a requirement, but it's something you can do if having the legs long for a long time is not so comfortable. Okay, so just stand for a moment. And if you're comfortable doing so, close your eyes. Just let your arms hang. And tune into the connection between the soles of your feet and the floor. And notice that there's already movement taking place. There's a little shift, right? From here to there. And you could make it deliberate, but even if you don't, if you just sort of think of what we call as standing still, you quickly find out there is no such thing. There's this constant drift, a little here and a little there. And then your vestibular is working, and it's as you go too far away from the center of your base, you come back, right? And for some of us, it's more comfortable to stand for a long period of time. Some of us get a little more tired. But if you just imagine, even for a short amount of time, that you could sort of take advantage of some of this movement's already there. Like you feel the drift, and then you imagine you're about to take a step, but you're actually riding the drift that's already there. Maybe it begins to give you a sense, like if you don't have the idea, I am trying to permanently stay in this place, but you just sort of begin to think of movement towards one place or another. And now you could have your eyes open again if you like, but slowly, very slowly, turn to see around behind yourself in one direction. But as you do so, listen to what happens under your feet. Is there something about the connection to the ground that helps you turn? And then turn the other direction. We could ask a lot of questions about which side feels better for your neck or your shoulders, your hips. You could be using many different joints. But one particular question is, in which direction does the ground seem to support the movement more clearly of the turning? So do you come away from one foot and come more towards the other foot? Does it feel like you fall onto one foot, or do you sort of extend away from, does the ground provide leverage to help carry you one way or the other? Okay. And then just come to the middle, and since we mentioned those two fictitious situations, just imagine for a moment that now you're standing in quicksand. Just feel the ground does not support you, and just allow your body to express that. Feel what happens. What happens to your spine, to your head? And then imagine that the ground becomes more solid and even begins to be that trampoline that begins to lift you. And so you can have a little process here where you just imagine that the ground itself becomes a little more liquid and a little more solid. But as you go between those two states, just listen throughout yourself to where do you find more length. And then when you collapse, you might not collapse right down the middle. It might be that you collapse over to the right or you turn a little to the left. What are the places that sink the most? And then what's it like to feel as if your head floats up off your spine and raises you up? And listen in particular to your ankles. Okay, take a little walk and just consider how you're using the ground underneath you in your walk. Is there a sense of stepping and falling into the floor, or is there a sense that the ground lifts up under you? Maybe one of those descriptions fits the right leg, but the other description fits the left leg. Could be that you feel a bit of lift on one side and kind of a sinking on the other. Just notice what it is and then come rest on your back on the floor. And have your legs long, but as I said before, if that's not your favorite, you can have something rolled up behind the knees. And actually, as we go through the lesson during the rest periods, you could potentially stand your feet during the rest periods if that helped you. You do whatever works for you, and if you need to take breaks, you take breaks. So just take a moment to consider that lying on the floor this way, that you're in the same basic position as standing. You've just changed your orientation to gravity. And maybe if you imagine that the wall below your feet was to move towards you, you could sense or you could guess which part of which foot would the wall touch first as it came towards you. Or if someone picked up the mat you were lying on and they were able to sort of drag you towards the wall. Your feet and your ankles are probably not in the same position as they would be in if the floor was right underneath them. Just imagine that the floor came up to meet your left foot. And when you imagine a pressure on the bottom of your left foot, how do you imagine that pressure traveling up the left leg? Where would you feel the movement in your knee? Would you feel the movement in your left hip joint, or is it possible that the movement wouldn't make it up to the hip joint? How do you imagine the movement would pass from the hip into the spine, into the upper body? Where might you experience something in your chest, your shoulders, your neck? Imagine a force that results from the right foot being met by the ground coming up under your right foot. Same idea. How far up do you think the movement would travel clearly? How would you experience that force in the knee or the hip, the spine? And imagine the ground were to come up below both feet together. And now just imagine the ground under your feet as you gently roll your head left and right. So there's a relationship to your feet and your head that you're interested in. You could imagine, what would it feel like for the ground underneath you when you turned your head one way or the other? Where might the pressure go on the soles of the feet? You don't necessarily have to know what the answer would be, the so-called correct answer, but you can imagine. Okay, bring your head to the middle. And now start reaching downwards with your right foot. And come back. So it just means that the front of the ankle opens and the right foot moves down and away from you. And then it comes back. You're going to do that many times. When I say you're going to do that many times, you're really, really going to do this many times. So as we go through, you can rest as often as you want. But continue to move the right foot down away from your head. And feel what happens. What do you notice behind your right ankle? The distance of the back of the ankle to the floor. What happens in the relationship of the back of the lower leg, the calf muscle against the floor? Where do you feel the pressure? And where does the pressure go as the foot moves down and away? When does the muscle behind in the back of the lower leg feel larger? When does it feel smaller? Listen to the space behind your right knee as you do the movement. As the foot goes down and the foot comes back, when is the knee closer to the floor? When is the knee further away? And listen behind the upper leg. Feel how the thigh meets the floor and how it changes with this movement. What do you feel in your right hip joint? The whole leg is moving, right? The ankle is sort of how we think of making this movement, but you can feel it's as if the movement in the ankle pulls the leg downwards. So how do you feel what happens in the pelvis and the connection of the leg into the pelvis? What happens with how your pelvis rests on the floor? Does the pelvis rock slightly? And what happens in the low back? Notice if there's a space there. And do you get more space when the foot goes away or when the foot returns? Feel the shoulder blades. Is there a way that you could use the shoulder blades, or maybe one shoulder, to help you make this movement? You feel the shoulder blades are pressed into the floor, but every time the foot goes down and away, is there some movement of the ribs which are just in front of the shoulder blades? Maybe in the front you feel a change in your breastbone. So as I said, it's many movements. It's many movements, the same movement, but we're listening to all these particular places. So you rest when you need to, but then you come back and you continue. And feel, imagine, sense the space behind your neck. What happens there every time the foot goes away? What happens to the distance from your chin to the top of your breastbone?
Hello.
Okay, take a rest. And now begin to draw the top of your foot towards yourself. So you close the angle on the front of your ankle. Make that movement many times. You draw the foot close and then you let it go back to where it was, and then you draw it close again. And once again, as you make the movement, listen to what happens all the way up the skeleton. So again, there's that space behind the ankle. Does the back of the ankle, the Achilles tendon, does it move towards the floor or away? Feel the calf and behind the right knee. Each time you take the top of your foot towards your shin. If you need to rest, you rest, but you rest so that you can continue. And again, feel the back of the right leg and the upper leg, the back of the pelvis. The low back. Shoulder blades. And the space behind the neck. Notice if there's a change along the back of your skull where it rests on the floor. Pause for a moment. And then make the movement of taking your foot down and the movement of taking your foot up. So it goes up and down. Feel how this movement passes up through the skeleton. These two movements. And as we said, maybe it passes part way up, or maybe it passes all the way up. You listen in different places. If you were to direct these movements from another place, for example, if you were to think of the back of your knee moving towards and away from the floor, could you actually help yourself to reach the foot away and draw it back towards you by thinking about what you're doing with the back of your knee? By thinking about how the back of your pelvis interacts with the floor, how the leg, it's like it reaches down, not just the foot, but the whole leg reaches down, and then it draws back up into the hip joint. And now, as you continue, just notice, is the back of your heel rubbing the floor? Is it sliding on the floor? Because that's one way you could do it. Another way you could be making the movement is that the heel is a point that connects to the floor and that you pivot over. So it's as if your heel pulls and pushes the floor. So think of making the same movement, but rather than thinking of the front of your foot going towards and away, think of the heel moving towards your head and away. And see if you can begin to really find some purchase with the back of your heel against the floor so that the pressure, it actually travels along the back of your heel a little up and down. And just notice where else could your heel, could your ankle get some help? From your pelvis, from your shoulder blades. As you make these two movements, when would it make sense to think of looking down with your eyes? When would it make sense to look up with your eyes? And you can experiment with the speed. You can do the movements quickly if that's okay for you. Do a few quick movements, rest when you need. But you're looking for how this connection travels up and how the ground, not just behind your heel, but all along the back of you, is there to provide leverage for the movement. Okay, rest for a moment and just feel the right side, the left side. So the next time you make the movement, begin to bring the toes into the movement. So as the foot goes down away from the head, reach away with the toes as well so that they curl under the foot. And then when you draw your foot towards you, also lift the toes so the toenails come even closer. So the movement in the ankle is the same, but now you're reaching down with the toes and you're drawing the toes up towards yourself. And see if you do this, if you can still have a sense of gripping the floor with the back of your heel. The toes curl as the foot goes away, and the toes lift as the top of the foot comes up towards your head. If you like, you can almost imagine that you're leading the movement with your toes. And then stop for a moment, and now you're going to make a movement where the toes go in the opposite direction. So reach your foot down away from you, but as you do so, draw the toes up towards your face. So the top of your foot goes down. You have a lot of space in front of the ankle, but you've taken the toes up towards your head. Then when you draw the foot towards you, you curl the toes under like you were trying to hold something with your toes. And you go back and forth with the toes moving opposite. So the coordination might take a little work to find. And see if you can discover how to do this. So one way to think of what you're doing is that the toes are going the opposite direction of your foot. As you start to play with this kind of coordination, pay attention that you don't hold your breath, you don't tense the jaw, your forehead, your belly, your hands. Now, the exact same movement could be described differently, which is to say, if you make the movement of the foot again, for a moment, don't worry about the toes, but you think of the movement of your heel. It's as if your heel was going away from you and then coming towards you, and it was helping to create a push up your leg. Feel that you could think of taking your heel and your toes in the same direction, so that your heel and your toes both went away from your head. and then your heel and your toes both moved towards your head. It's the same movement, but you're connecting what you're doing in a different way with your attention. So as the top of the foot comes towards you, it's like you're shortening the bottom of your foot. And as the top of the foot goes away from you, you're shortening the bottom of your foot, or you're lengthening the top of your foot. Just think of how the heel and the toes could be going towards and away from each other. But you have a connection to the ground under your feet, under your heels. Okay. Just go back to the simple movement of taking the foot towards and away. Let's see, how is the movement passing up through your body now? Behind the ankle, behind the knee, the pelvis rocking on the floor. Movement of the ribs in front of the shoulder blades. Your head rocking. Okay, leave it alone, take a rest. Gently roll your head a little side to side. And if you were to imagine, as you did at the beginning, that the ground had come up under your feet, what's it like to think of that as the head goes to the right or as the head goes to the left? Okay, bring your head to the middle and begin to reach your left foot down and away from you. Just that first initial movement. Reach it away and come back. You take the time to feel how this isn't simply the ankle. It isn't simply the heel. Just slowly move your attention up the back of your left leg, feeling how the movement expresses itself at each place. Behind the ankle, behind the knee, the upper leg, behind the pelvis, in the low back, in the upper back, and back of your head, behind your neck. And then begin to draw the left foot towards you. Take a rest. And then move your left foot towards yourself and away, towards your head and away. And make a few movements where you think of the front of your foot, and then you make a few movements thinking of the movement of your heel. When When is there more distance between the back of your knee and your heel? When is there less distance? When is there more distance between your left heel and your left sit bone? And when is there less distance? And listen to the low back. Listen to the shoulder blades. Could the shoulder blades help you make this movement? Is there a way that you could push and pull in your upper back against the floor to help move the left foot towards yourself and away? Imagine that someone was sitting above you on the floor and they reached down with their hands and they sort of hooked them under your armpits. And they could just pull you a little towards themselves and then gently push you. And your shoulder blades wouldn't go anywhere, but how there could be this sliding. So now begin to move both feet towards and away. Move them together. Feel how you can pull the ground. You can push the ground away. Feel the movement through the back of the legs, back of the pelvis, low back. Take a rest for a moment. And now have your hands next to your side and turn your palms downwards. And so your fingers more or less pointing down towards your feet here. The elbows are straight. And just feel that maybe there's a very small movement you could make of reaching towards your feet with both hands. It's not much, but you could reach your hands down away from your head and then allow them to come back. And do that a number of times. Reach your hands away from your head and then let them come back. It's a small movement, and when you come back, the elbows are still straight. So bring your hands close to you. Some people have the hands sort of pointing out at an angle. It's as if you were reaching straight down. You're just sliding your palms along the floor a little bit. Now, when you run out of kind of anywhere to go, can you begin to lift the fingers of your hands? When they can't go any further down, it's like the fingers get longer and they lift. They lift before the palms. Maybe the palms want to begin to lift as well at a certain point. Slide your hands down and away and then lift the fingers. But you lift the fingers by thinking of lengthening the fingers until they lift. And then maybe the palm lifts afterwards, and it's like you were pushing something. Your fingers, your hands could be in the position where, like if you were dribbling a basketball, you would have the hand parallel to the floor below. And actually go ahead and stand your feet for a moment. Bend your knees and stand your feet. And now, again, make the same movement with the hands, reaching down and then lifting the fingers, lifting the wrists, and feel what's happening behind your neck. So you slide straight down away from your head, and when the sliding can't continue, the hands, the fingers, and then the wrists begin to lift. Feel what's happening if your neck is beginning to lift. Could you begin to think of looking up over your head, looking up above you? And you could begin to reach down with your pubic bone so that the pelvis begins to roll a little way. And some of you will begin to feel that the back of the head slides and you begin to move more towards the top of your head. You don't have to do any more than feels comfortable. Just do a little bit. If your fingers are lifting, they're lifting before the wrists. You can actually lift your wrists as the arms come back up. Let the wrists lift, but the fingertips stay on the floor. And then your elbows will bend. No. So you reach away from your head and you lift the fingers and then the wrist. But as the arms come up, you could lift the wrist from the floor but drag the fingertips, and you'll feel that you begin to bend the elbow on the way up. Okay, that's fine. Go ahead and lengthen your legs again. And now move your feet down away from your head and then bring them towards you. And every time you reach down with your feet, reach down with your hands. And let your hands come up as your feet come up towards your head. And just feel how this movement passes through you. What happens in the shoulders and the spine between the shoulder blades. And now reach the arms down as the feet come up. And try to make more or less an even movement on the left and the right. So you might feel that you have more ability to reach on one side or the other. Try to make it even. Okay. And then let your arms just rest, but feel if you continue to move the feet down and up, you continue to feel how the heels provide leverage against the floor. Can you begin to get a clearer sense now of how you might use the shoulder blades as well, how the ribs could move in front of the shoulders? It's as if your arms were reaching up and down, except now they don't move. Now they just stay attached to the floor, and yet something is moving relative to your shoulders. And if you like, you can make the movements faster. When does your chin go towards your chest? When does it move away? And if you begin to make faster movements, does that mean your breath has to speed up, or can you still have a smooth and even breath where you bounce many times on one inhalation, bounce many times on one exhalation? As you continue, just have the arms in one place on the floor. So the reaching we did with the arms was in order to wake something up. But now we're going back to just seeing how we can generate the movement from the heels so that the hands don't slide on the floor. But maybe the distance of your head to your hands changes as you make the movement. Okay, take a rest. And now move one foot down while the other foot comes up. So you begin to make a movement that's like a paddling of the feet. The top of one foot comes up towards your shin as the other one reaches away from you, and then the other foot comes up and the other foot goes down. Think of the feet going towards and away, and then think of the heels going towards and away. Now, when does the left knee come towards the floor? When does the right knee come towards the floor? But don't lift the knees so much that the heels are dragging on the floor. The heels are attached to the floor. But there is a change in the back of the knee, and there's a sense that one hip joint goes down and then the other. How can you help yourself make this movement from other places? What do you do with your head as you paddle one foot and then the other? Do you want to roll your head? Try rolling your head a little left and right as you paddle the feet. Just notice, do you turn your head towards the foot that goes down or the foot that's coming up? And of course, you have this ability to do either combination. You could turn your head either way. But just feel when the movement seems like two things that you're doing at the same time, because you're capable of doing that, and when does it just feel like there's this natural flow where the movement in the head and the movement in the ankles, just it's essentially the same movement, that there's no need to direct anything because everything is in agreement. Okay, take a rest. And now, as you did before, lead the movement with your toes. So one foot goes down and one foot comes up, but as the foot goes down, the toes curl under. As the foot comes up, the toes lift. So one foot and its toes are going down and away, and the other foot and the other set of toes are coming up. If you like, you can just make a few movements with the toes without so much moving the feet. Just think of curling the toes and lifting the toes, just to get that clear. But then as the foot goes down, the toes curl under, and as the foot comes up, the toes lift up towards your head. Let's do something to just give you another little sense. We talked before about how, in a previous class, how it can be difficult to feel all the sensations of the individual toes. So just make the movement with your right foot for a moment. Foot goes down and you curl the toes, and the foot comes up and you lift the toes. And just notice if you're sliding the back of your heel against the floor up and down away from you, or if you are rolling over the heel. If you're lifting the knee a lot, you're probably sliding the heel. See if you can keep, it's like the heel is driving the movement. But now as you reach the toes away, can you imagine, or maybe you'll find it, that it's kind of like a when you see someone playing a scale on the piano and it's one at a time. So take the big toe down and then the second toe and then the third and then the fourth and the fifth. And then when you come up, imagine a sort of a ripple where the big toe comes up first and then all the other toes out to the little toe. And it doesn't matter if you feel like you can do this precisely, but use the image of this sort of ripple effect You start the movement with the big toe and you move through to the little, and then again when you're drawing the foot up. And then make a few movements where you begin as if it's the little toe that curls down first, and then it's the fourth and the third and the second and the first. And then try this with the left foot. So let the right foot rest, take the left foot down and up. But as you curl the toes, as you lift the toes, think of starting on one end and moving through the toes to the other side. Again, it's like if you play the piano, or you just imagine someone playing the scales on the piano, how one finger goes down and then the next and the next. Lead from the big toe, lead from the little toe. And then move both feet up and down, curling the toes, uncurling the toes, but as if it's a ripple that goes through from one side to the other. Okay, take a rest. And then reach your right foot down, but pull the toes up. And at the same time, draw your left foot up, but curl the toes down. And then switch. So this is now a bit of a puzzle for your brain, isn't it? The feet go up and down, you paddle the feet, one foot goes away and one foot goes towards you. But as the foot goes down, the toes come up. As the foot comes up, the toes go down. So now break it down. Just begin by reaching the right foot down and away from you and keeping it there. So the front of your foot is far away from you on the right side, but now lift the toes towards you without changing your ankle. Just lift the toes and pull the left foot towards you and keep it there, but then curl the toes under. And then let everything return. And you can do that a number of times. So you just build the pattern. Take the right foot down, leave it there, lift the toes, leave it there, bring the left foot up, leave it there, but curl the toes under. And then you can reach the left foot down, leave it there, but lift the toes. And at the same time, you pull the right foot up, but you curl the toes under. And then you switch. You go back and forth. So it's like with one foot, you're holding a pencil as it comes towards you. And with the other foot, you're throwing the pencil away from yourself. You're tossing it down below your feet somewhere. If you like, you try that with one foot. Just think of grabbing a pencil and pulling it towards your head, and then sort of flinging the pencil away from you. But your heels stay connected to the ground. Okay, so just go back to paddling the feet now. The toes just are passengers. The left foot goes down, the right foot comes up. You're opening the front of one ankle, you're closing the front of the other ankle. Feel the movement up through your pelvis, through your shoulders. Okay, rest. And now with both feet, begin to draw circles. Draw 2 circles. And just notice at what point in the circle is your heel closer to you and when is it further away? Notice if you're making circles in the same direction or if you're making two different circles. You're always connected to the floor with the back of your heels. So reach both feet down and then to one side and bring both feet up and then reach both feet over to the other side. So make circles in the same directions now with your 2 feet. You can go to the right or you can go to the left, clockwise or counterclockwise, but make the same circle with both feet, with both heels. It's like you're drawing a circle in the air. Some of you, it's like you're beginning to roll left and right, but you still want to feel that there's a movement up and down. So feel how you could help yourself with the back of your pelvis. Do you feel that there's a circular pressure on the back of your pelvis? And you can change the direction of the circles. Feel if your breastbone is drawing a circle through space. Could you think of your chest helping you to make the circles? Using your shoulder blades. And now begin to circle your feet so that they both go down, and then one foot goes away from the other, and then they both come up and then they come towards each other. So that the circles are moving, the feet move towards and away from each other as you make a circle. At one point in the circle, the feet are close, and another point in the circle, the feet are further away. Feel when does your chin come down towards your chest? When does it move up and away? And then you can reverse the direction of the circles so that if they were coming towards each other on the way up, then they'll be coming towards each other on the way down. And take a rest. What would it be like right now to lift your head off the floor? Just feel if something's alive along the length of your spine. Okay, and now one last time, move both feet up and down. If you can really feel how this movement can travel all the way up now. You feel the back of your heels pulling the floor and pushing the floor and pulling the floor and pushing the floor. The back of your head, and pressure going up and down the back of your head. And now feel the direction that your chin moves towards and away from your chest. And feel the direction of your heels. Are you looking up overhead as your heels go down and away, or as your heels come up? And now, can you reverse the movement of your head so that instead of the feeling of rolling up and down over the back of your head, you feel that the back of the head rubs against the floor? When the tops of your feet come towards you, it's like you're looking down as if you were going to see the tops of your feet. When they reach away, you look up and over you. Feel the movement of the spine between the shoulders as you do that. Yeah, and some of you are going faster. You can go faster if you want. Okay, leave it all alone. And bend your knees and stand your feet. And roll to your side. And come all the way up into standing. Now that the ground is underneath you again, see if you can feel still this idea of a movement that comes up away from the ground. So if you stand and you just lean a little bit forward, you feel if you lean a little too far, there's a moment where your toes will begin to sort of scrunch up to try to grip the floor. But if you come back, can you think of your ankles actually moving backwards? You imagine you're one of those long distance ski jumpers. You know how they lean out, but there's something reaching back of your ankles, and you don't have to make it a big movement. And then as you come forward, rather than going down, can you actually lift up? You lift your heels, come forward, and then feel that you could come up onto your tiptoes. If you like to be in front of the wall or something, you can do that. And then when you lower your heels, can you lower your heels slowly so you don't fall on your heels? But you actually lightly place the front of your heels down as if the skin touches but not the bone. And feel what it's like to stand on those heels where the weight is more towards the front of the heel. And then feel what it's like to just sort of sink onto your heels. When are you standing on a trampoline? When are you standing on quicksand? If you like, you can come up again onto the tiptoes and then lower the heels, but the second the heels touch, before you feel the bone, you lift again. And you bounce up and down, but you never put any serious weight into the heels. You just come up, up, up. I think the second that your heels lift, the top of your head lifts. Okay, so take a little walk and just see if you can find some of this lift in the walking. The connection, maybe you can keep that connection between the heel and the top of the head. And if anyone wants to talk about how it went, we've got some time for that.
I wish to have more feet Feldenkrais classes.
All right. We can arrange that. We can arrange that. You like that one?
Yes,
Yeah.
I enjoy very, very much the feet. And I think it's something that my body needs, like that I need, like, yeah, to enjoy the feet and this connection that the feet makes through the whole body.
Yeah. Pretty powerful, pretty profound. And of course, our feet were not designed to live inside shoes and walk only on flat surfaces, but that's the world we live in now. But the ability of the feet to change shape in all these ways, I mean, just think of, some of you may have done this, but if you were to walk outside in nature with no shoes on, your feet would have to be able to do all these kinds of things while still providing support, still being able to create this upward lift.
There is one beautiful woman from Colombia, and she doesn't have hands, both. So she speaks with using the feet, and she does everything with the feet. And it's very beautiful how she used the feet and how the feet developed like through all her life, because she never had the hands. So it's very beautiful to watch how she does it. And she records a lot of video in her Facebook or Instagram. And it's like incredible, amazing how she used the feet and how the plasticity of the feet are, and how she used the hips also, like the whole length of the, and how the knees also interplay with the whole thing that she does, like whole spine. Like if you observe whole her body language, like it's so incredible. And she just like playing with the feet, and even express like herself with the feet, like me now with the hands.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, if you go onto YouTube and you just search people without arms, there's people you can find, cooking at the, making eggs on the frying pan with their feet. I've seen a woman go to a fast food restaurant in her car and get food out of the window with the takeout. There's a woman who actually flies airplanes and works all the controls with her feet. So another one I haven't seen, but I was told about a woman diapering her baby, right, with her feet.
I've seen that one.
So, go ahead, Joanne.
No, I said I've seen that one.
Oh, you have? Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So Seth, I thought that was just a great lesson, and I have a strong history of a lot of difficulty with my left Achilles. Actually, ironically, stemming from an injury in high school in a gymnast in a gym class. Maybe even, I can't even remember, from a trampoline, possibly. It was not certain which. And I just want to share the Feldenkrais story of about 8 years ago, I was told by an orthopedic doc that I'd gotten into a position that every step hurt. The pain was so intense that if I put weight on my left foot more than an hour a day, I was in absolute agony. But it wasn't that, it was that every single step hurt. And I was told by the doctor that I would need a steroid pack 3 or 4 times a year, that it was going to be absolutely impossible, to recover from it. And I did try one steroid pack just to try to get myself back to a pattern of how I was walking to see if I could get myself back. Anyway, it took about 6 months through working with Feldenkrais and to get back. And so I have ever since taken it very, very seriously. But in what I've been doing for whatever it is now, 7 or 8 years, I hadn't done as much as what we just did. So that was just terrific. I mean, you really just expanded what I do almost every day, substantially. So I really appreciate the challenge, especially the challenge of the toes and feet moving in different directions and in circles in different directions. That was very, very useful, because I have been doing ankle circles about 10 times a day, doing 5 or 10 a day just to keep myself even. And I have not been in pain like I was before at all. And I've not had any steroids since. So I really have proven to myself, both with back and Achilles, that this is an incredibly powerful thing to have access to.
Yeah, cool.
But thanks for expanding it. You really expanded it.
Great. Well, it's interesting, but this is just like so many stories where the medical experts tend to focus in on this one place. Yeah. And I imagine if you were working with Feldenkrais practitioners and got better, they were probably not just talking to you about your feet, but they were talking to you about walking, right? And walking is something that we do with the whole self. And part of what's going on in this lesson, which Feldenkrais wrote about and wasn't a mistake, was he's working with the righting reflex. And there's this relationship between the heels and the extensor muscles all through the back, that in a certain position, you just find that there's this lift that wants to happen, not just because one thing presses another, but it's this reflex that it's the same thing. If we're falling and we have that reflex where all the extensors, so this lesson just kind of like again and again, like reminds you of that pattern.
Yeah, very effective.
Cool.
I agree with Deborah, what she said about this coordination stuff and how it works. Mm-hmm. And I would say that also what was very cool for me, that especially if you have a towel or something that you can put under your knees or under your knees, that the whole connection, like the whole hip area, like spine and the head, like what this movement does with this. And if you allow this alignment to be alive and these forces to go through, you start to actually notice that while you are moving your feet, like the whole connection is very active, and it's a very beautiful experience of this dimension of up and down, like in your body, like up and down, and this line which is like doing with you like this, and suddenly, like if we connect the cingulum, the clavicula and scapula area, like the whole ring, and it's like everything like floats, and everything, like your whole skeleton, you started to feel through your feet the whole skeleton. Mm-hmm. And it's very cool.
Yeah. There's something almost fish-like about it as well, with the ankles. Like one way to do this thing with the toes is to actually do it with a little bit of a delay, or sort of like, so if they become a little staggered, do you get a little bit of this kind of a feeling too?
Yeah. Waves.
I have to practice making my hands into feet.
So what I've learned over the years, at least for me, I don't get out of bed without starting with this movement. I do this as I'm lying in order to get myself ready for that first step, because it can change everything. So it it really just becomes just a part of when I wake up. That's one of the things that I do.
Cool.
That's Deborah, when you were saying your experience about your Achilles, I had something that showed up, maybe it started showing up a year ago on one side. And then, so that was one connection. But I really got out a lot out of when we were kind of waving with the toe, the big toe first, and then because then I started to really sense the inside of the heel and the outside of the heel. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to do that. Because when I was in the healing places, I was kind of doing the ABCs with my foot. But I think I was zeroing in, on my foot. And then, of course, this lesson brings you to everything. Yeah. and so I think, like you said, lying in bed, but sensing the heel, like the ABCs from the heel, or that wave action inside the heel, outside the heel. And then, as you said, the writing and the lifting that can happen before you even get out of bed, through the whole body, out through the toes. And so that was really amazing. Then, Martinez, I'm sorry. Did I pronounce your name right?
Mateos.
Oh gosh, I was thinking of somebody else. Anyway, I really admire what you said about the clavicles, and because I really don't, I think for the first much of the lesson, I was kind of bypassing the middle of the body. I don't know why. The head and the ultra focus on the hips and the feet, and then it's like maybe at the end your cue was something with the the carriage of the chest, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's right, you're there. So I feel like it's too it can be I think my body can learn if I do this again, and maybe be in a different place. That can be healing to not leave some part of your body out. And I don't know why it was left out, meaning that's part of my story, I suppose. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not always important why, right? If you just find it and you bring it in, then you can feel something. But this thing about the heels is really important. Like, even it's fine to do it in bed, but the reason that Feldenkrais is generally on a harder surface, so you can get that feedback. And if you just sort of do the movement with the ankles, but you don't feel the connection into the ground, then it becomes harder for the rest of the body to. But if you get to the point where it feels like the whole body is inching up and down the floor, that comes with that connection into the ground in the back of the heels. And so that really can be kind of part of the secret of waking up those other places.
Yeah, I'm also, I like what Mary said about playing piano with your feet, let's say. Like, sorry, not with your feet, but with your toes in your feet, like playing piano and starting like doing some kind of this, and you start to feel like outside and inside areas, and it brings you like very just different experiences instead of like just pendling like this. And it's like you started to notice differences between like what is happening in your right or left feet, and it's very also powerful, like I would say playing piano your feet.
And this is one of those things would be endless variations. So you can do this, but you could actually reach sort of towards one side, the other, or you could cross your ankles and have one ankle in the air, but the crossed legs is going to influence how it fits into the hip joint. It's going to be a one-sided thing, and then you can switch and go the other way, and lots of ways to play with that.
Yeah, I think also I think I have a like kind of reflection that the feet are very important and kind of forgotten. And like while lying on the floor and seeing that it brings so many connection, especially through the whole spine until the top of the head, like it's very important if we bring it to the while we walking or running or whatever. And it's very powerful, like this area of the body, and like how it connects with the floor, and how because of the floor it influences on our whole vertical, let's say, line, the vertical force that goes up and down like through the feet. I think it's the body really need, and it's kind of forgotten. I think the feet, the people mostly are telling or speak what the body needs, like the body needs this, the body needs that, but I think very powerful what the body needs is just the floor and our feet.
Yeah. Well, so maybe I can get away with doing at least another 1 or 2 things with the feet. Do something maybe this week. How'd you do, Joanne? I noticed you kind of took it easy during the lesson. Did you get any bounce or any spring in your step?
Have a confession.
Did you fall asleep? Okay.
I was in and out of sleep. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
When they were saying some things, I'm like, I didn't hear that. I didn't hear that.
Yeah, that can happen. You know, Feldenkrais actually, he wrote a couple books early on about hypnotherapy. And I don't know exactly, but there's something about the delivery of the lines and the way that the speaking is happening. And of course, it's never my goal to put people asleep, but I'm sure that I've fallen into a little bit of the patterns I was trained in, where there's a kind of, there's a deliberate thing. If you sort of get into a sort of a trance-like place and then move from there, you might move with a different quality, but it can also just have that effect. Well, you've heard all these wonderful things, so now you can go to the recording and find out.
I'm going to replay it. But it's all beautiful. I'm like, this is beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Didn't Feldenkrais, didn't he believe that you, in fact, were getting a lesson even if you were asleep?
I don't know if he said that. That was said many times during my training.
It has been said to me.
Right. And I think it's a comforting thing. I always felt like I got more out of the lesson when I stayed awake. But yeah, you never know. I mean, there's definitely a place you can get into. I've definitely sort of gone in and out in the course of a lesson. And then that can be a kind of you're kind of half awake, but you're awake enough to hear the instructions and make the movement. And that can be a nice feeling. So,
but
I think that was happening to me. I was hearing some things and I thought I was moving.
But I think also, Joanne, because like a lot of time I had this similar thing that I fell asleep while taking the classes.
Yeah.
And I also noticed that it has also something to do like how I feel in the day, like what I did in the day, because sometimes like my nervous system, my whole body, it's very overloaded, and I am like, oh, I did so much things, and then I lie on the floor and my body starts, and if I slow down while lying on the floor, my body kind of start to also relax, and the forces are influences you in different ways. So I'm like falling asleep because just my body wants to rest, and I think it's also cool and beautiful sensation to feel that you just need it, you know.
Yeah. Well, I must say I felt rested when I heard Seth saying something about, okay, we can talk about it, and I'm like, it's over. But I did feel rested, so no worries.
Well, I agree with Mateos. I mean, you come to class in a way to listen to your body. And sometimes as soon as you listen, your body says, yeah, I haven't been getting enough rest. And so that can happen. But I think we've reached our time, so I'm going to wrap it up.
Thank you.
But
Thank you.
be back tomorrow. And the recording will probably come a little later today. I will get it to you later today, but I'm actually about to do another thing online, like almost right away right now. So I won't be able probably to get to it for a little bit.
Thank you. Thanks.
But you'll have it soon.
Thank you.
See
Okay.
you tomorrow.
Yeah. Take
Okay.
care, everyone.
See you later. Thanks.